Okay, awesome. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Strange, Dark, and Related podcast. This is episode 2. Uh, and I am Elfie, your host. And with me, I have the Relateds. And I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Willow.
Hi, I'm Levi.
I'm Gabby.
Hi, man.
All right, awesome. Today, I actually threw a curveball at the Relateds, and I did not tell them what we were going to discuss. So, yeah, I think they're a little interested to find out what today's topic is going to be. So let's jump right into it. Um, so the other day, Mills and I were talking, and we were talking about like deja vu and what we think deja vu is. And I said that I think deja vu um, happens because when you die, you actually get to choose if you are going to relive this life or if you're going to relive a different timeline. And so when you relive the life to try to do whatever it is you need to do, I personally think that when you go through life, you have like a purpose, and whether that may be like to help someone learn something or you yourself have to learn something. It depends on what like your mission is for that lifetime. But when you come back and you're reliving that lifetime, you actually still have all that knowledge, but it's in your subconscious. And so you may not realize that you still have those past memories. So deja vu is when you're actually remembering something that happened because you did already live it. But that's what I think deja vu is. And I want to see what you guys think.
It's a really interesting concept. I actually really like your theory on it. I have jumped back and forth throughout the years on what I think deja vu is. And science says, I think I read in an article once that science says deja vu is neurons misfiring in the brain. And so instead of going to your short-term memory, it hits your long-term memory before it's able to go through that process. And so that's why you think it's deja vu. But I've also experienced deja vu many times, and I feel like that may not necessarily be an accurate representation of what all deja vu is. Maybe it's some of it, maybe it's not. But I think there's a lot of instances in deja vu in which it's, I personally believe it is an alternate universe crossing over, the paths diverging. Maybe. That's just my current thought at the moment. In the past, it's been different. So
That's interesting that you say about like the parallel universes. So I hadn't thought about it as like parallel universes. Oh, this is Willow, by the way. So for me, I think I have thought more on um, reliving lives over and over again. I don't know why this happens, because there have been times where, like for myself and my deja vu, um, I have a deja vu and then it changes. So it's different than what the deja vu was supposed to be. Um, I also feel like I've had some deja vu dreams and like I dreamt something and then it happened later on. And it could be simple things like walking down a street that I've never been down before, right? It doesn't have to be, it's not prophetic or anything like that. It's just deja vu. Um, yeah. So for me, I think I probably fall into the bucket closer to what Elfie was saying, um, that it feels more like to me new, like reliving something that was previously lived before.
So I have the what Willow calls deja vu dreams. But I do see them as prophetic. I see them as I'm having dreams about these things, even if they're mundane things like walking down the street. And for me, they're signs that I'm on the right path of what I'm supposed to be doing. They're like my signs to be like, okay, even if it's something that's mundane, like I'm doing laundry and these specific series of things happen, and I'm like, okay, that's my sign that whatever I'm doing, I'm on the right path. And that's my sign.
Um, I think that deja vu is probably something that your future self is trying to tell you about, whether it's something small, something big, because like it could be a past memory, it could be a future memory but whether it is, I feel like it would be important to remember, and that's why they have deja vu.
I kind of like the idea of a future memory. How like like your future self is telling you something, because for myself, there have been times where I'm like, if um if like I guess reincarnation is real and you're like reliving your life again and again, there have been moments in time I was like, you need to remember this moment. You need to remember this moment. Take a snapshot in your mind. You need to remember this for your future self. So it would be interesting to like, I guess that would be your past self sending you memories, but like your future self also sending you memories, saying this is a memory.
That's interesting. So I remember like when I was a kid, like when I would have deja vu, I don't know about you guys how you experience deja vu, but when I experience it, I not only remember like, oh yeah, like I remember living this before, but I also remember what's going to happen next. And so like when I was a kid, it used to freak me out, and I was like, I'd be like, dude, I know what's gonna happen next, and then it would happen. And I was like, you know what? I always do exactly what I remember happening. I was like, what would happen if I didn't do what I remember happening next? And I tried it once, and it's interesting because now I'll have deja vu where I'll remember something happening, and then I'll be like, okay, this is what's supposed to happen next. And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. So I think that I did alter my timeline by making different choices. And so I think that even though I have lived this life before, um, in a sense, I've lived it before, I'm also living it. It's like the same life, but also a different life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Um,
What you're saying is that you've jumped into your alternate timeline.
Yes.
You made the choice to take that divergence and run the other way.
Yeah. And I'm like, where is it going to lead? Who knows?
I like that.
but you know what's interesting for me is when I don't get deja vu, it feels very unnerving, because there was a couple years there where I didn't get deja vu, and I was like, and kind of how Anne said um, about like it's a sign for her that she's on the right path. Like when I didn't get deja vu for those few years, I didn't know what the right choice was, right? Like I didn't have a feeling towards something. It made me feel very lost in a sense, which is actually the first time I'm saying that out loud, because it feels very strange to say like I lead my life by my deja vu. But there is a feeling like this is the right path with certain deja vu, or like this is not what you want to do with my deja vu. So don't go down this path, which is kind of why at moments in my life I think like you need to remember this for your future self. Like you need to remember this. Like this is not the right thing to do. Do something else. Or like this is the right thing to do. Do this. Um, so I don't know if it's like parallel universe, like what it is, but or maybe it's just like an echo of energy, right? A blip in time. And if you're living in a circle and you just happen like a record player, right? And you go over that blip.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm actually interested. So when Anne said that she feels like um her like she's going down the right path when she's having deja vu, um I'm interested what would happen if you had deja vu and it didn't go the way that you expected. Like, would that be stressful, like, for you? Would you feel like now you're doing, like, something wrong? Because, when I did something different, it was exciting, and I was like, "Ooh, I'm gonna go down a different path," right? I didn't feel like it was the wrong path, it just felt like it was a different path. So I'm interested to hear about from Anne, like, what that means for her.
So I have done that, and it didn't necessarily feel wrong, although through reflection, I do feel like it was the wrong one for me. Um, just because I've found that over time, there were, as Gabby would say, occurrences for timelines to remerge, um, where I made choices that basically put me back on the timeline. Where it was like, even though it was diverging paths, eventually, like, it kept on giving me options to go back onto, like, the right path. And then as soon as, like, I made that decision, it was like, whew, I feel good, really, really good about this decision. And then that's when, like, the deja vu, like, really started happening again. So for
So
me, that's why.
So do you feel like you're only meant to follow one path?
No, I feel like there's certain decisions that you have to make to be able to either experience something specific or learn a specific lesson or like have the opportunity to do that. And um it's not always going to be presented in the same way. So like learning a lesson in trust, you're going to be presented that opportunity, and that may not always be presented in exactly the same way, but you're always given the opportunity to do that. And your choice to either accept learning that lesson or not is entirely up to you, but you are going to be given opportunities to learn that lesson later on if you don't choose to learn that lesson right now. So you're going on diverging paths, but like you get it's like choose your own adventure, but there are certain like milestones that you need to hit type of situation. So there'll be opportunities for you to hit those milestones in different ways.
Interesting.
So one of those things that I have wondered, or I don't know if you guys have felt this way, is when with like deja vu and when like do you ever have a feeling of like this is not the right, like I'm missing out on something important, like I'm missing out on um something I should be doing because I made a different choice than I should have. Um or I guess the inverse of that would be like, have you ever stepped into something being like, I know this isn't probably a good choice, but it is going to teach me something and I know it's something I have to learn.
I mean, is that deja vu related or is it more intuition? Because I feel like that's more intuition. You learn from your experiences, and you can kind of suss out certain vibes from situations so that you can protect yourself in the future, depending on whatever situation that you find yourself in, or you even possibly even see the situation as something that you don't want to go into given the kind of person that you want to be, even if this is the person that you are who would be in these situations. It's not somebody that you want to be, and so you don't really want to get in there. So I feel like it's more intuition than deja vu.
So what I'm
Or
saying
do
is a
you
little
think those
bit
would be
different.
related?
what I'm saying is a little bit different. So it's almost like how Elfie was saying that she knew where it was leading, and you are presented with a situation and you're like, I know where this is gonna, like, I can, like, it feels very deja vu-ish, not like, oh, these are the action, not like logically, like these are the actions, and so this is ultimately like who this person is, and so this is where it's gonna go. But just being presented with a situation, like you come to a crossroads and you know, like you have deja vu. If you walk down this road, this is what's gonna, like, this is where this is ultimately gonna go. Even if there's really nothing telling you ultimately, like, this is what the end result is of that road. Um, so it's almost like a deja vu echo. So I don't feel like it's intuition either. Um, and it's not really deja vu, but it's almost like a deja vu echo, if that makes sense.
Okay, that does make sense.
So to me, that actually sounds more like intuition, or at least what I perceive intuition to be, because it's one of those things where it's like it's your gut feelings, and it's the feelings that you can't describe or explain that's influencing a decision that you're making. For me, that's intuition.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, Willow, but I think what is being described is, I think it is a mixture of intuition and deja vu, because when you come across a situation, generally speaking, you don't know what's going to happen. But when you have deja vu mixed into it, as Alfie was saying before, you can see what kind of things are going to happen given the decision that you make. Willow, please correct me if I'm wrong, but your question was more related to, if you know what's going to happen, do you feel you're missing out on something if you have a different if you make the decision to make a different action than within what your deja vu had originally said?
Yeah, that, or like you decide to go down the left path instead of the right path, not
Right.
knowing ultimately what's going to happen, but then
Do you feel like you'd be missing out if you didn't take the other path?
no, not do you ever feel like, oh, I went down the left path, and then you're like, oh, there's something that I missed out on. It's almost like there's a deja vu that I was supposed to have and it didn't happen, right? Like I was supposed to be, like, I shouldn't be here right now. It should have been something else. Not good or bad, but just like there was an experience that I'm missing out on because I took the left path instead of the right path.
So for me, like when I say that, like I know what's gonna happen with deja vu, it's literally like a memory. Like, let's say, like
Mm-hmm.
right now we're all talking, right? And I'm like, okay, now Willow's gonna say like this, and then Anne's gonna get upset about that, right? And so like I'm remembering it as though like it had already happened. It's a memory. So I don't think like, oh, I missed out on an experience. Like I know exactly what I was going to experience. So it doesn't feel like I missed out on anything because I already know what I missed out on. I'm like, this is exactly what was going to happen. Um, so I guess for me, I would say no. Like when I choose a path different from what my deja vu was, then it's more like I don't know what's going to happen because I haven't gone down this path before. So it's kind of like, let's see where it leads. But I already know what will happen if I take this other path.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I guess
Do
it
you
would
ever
be.
have deja?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Anne.
Do you ever have deja vus that are shorter? Because I feel like I have deja vus like the ones that you're describing, where like it's a full sequence of events. But I also feel like I have like snapshots occasionally where I'm going through the motions of something, and then I'm like, oh, I've done this before. But at that point, it's not like I have any like recollection of anything before that. It's just I went through the motion of this one singular thing, and then at that moment, once it ends, that's when like memory kicks in, and I'm like, this has already happened. Like, do you have ever shorter ones where you really don't have like that type of experience, and then maybe you think, oh, well, what if I made a different decision at that point? Because I feel like you've really only experienced the longer ones and not really the shorter ones.
I would love to hear Levi's thoughts on this.
I think that I have gone through those shorter deja vus before, or like Anne said, but I never really thought too much of it. Like, in the back of my head, I always thought, oh, I did this before. And then after that, I just completely forgot, didn't pay any attention to that kind of thing. But now that you say that, and it's really interesting. Because there are just fragments in that where you see that deja vu, but it's too late to change anything.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, I do have snapshots like that. And then I don't know if this happens to any of you, but I'll even have those snapshots and be like, dude, I've done this like 6 times already.
I don't know if I can put a number to it, but sometimes it just feels like muscle memory, even though there is no muscle memory there, if that makes sense. Yeah, like it just clicks. Like, I guess, I don't know, it is kind of interesting to think, like, what is muscle memory? What is intuition? What is deja vu? Like, are any of those like related? Um, yeah.
Well, okay, so it's funny that you say muscle memory, because muscle memory is when you do something so many times that your body just naturally goes with it, right? And you see there's a certain, I know it's going to seem tangential, but just bear with me here. There is like a certain kind of bird that fly when they migrate. It's either a bird or a butterfly. When they migrate after mating season, they particularly avoid a specific area. And scientists have realized that they avoid this particular area because there used to be a mountain there. And so there's like a generational thing, and they think that they feel it, an energy memory kind of thing, where they feel the energy in the earth and they feel the energy in the atmosphere or something, and they know to avoid that mountain, that's not even there anymore. Do you think that these deja vus are energy memories within ourselves? Do you think that's like uh that could possibly be one of the yeah. I don't
Yeah,
know
I
how to
guess.
feel question.
I get what you're saying, and I would agree with you. I think it definitely could be. Um, I've never thought. I did hear about that bird, um, study or whatever it was, but uh, yeah, I've never really thought about it in the sense of like
Like
deja vu.
generational deja vu.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to look at it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, so let's explore this path, right? Because it is an interesting path. So if energy is neither created nor destroyed, right? And we just like are moving through life as energy. So I wonder if what that means is like from your parents, do you get some like, is it like a combination of those two energies? Is it like one energy and it's like their shared experiences? So not only with DNA, it's also like your generations and your ancestors back, right?
Possibly, yeah. But I was also thinking like a spirit or a soul is made of energy, right? When you see, there's flashes of light that have been proven when somebody passes on from this world into the next, whatever you may believe, what have you. But there have been instances of flashes of light being recorded, and it's not explainable. So theoretically, a spirit or a soul would be a form of energy, whether we can measure it or not. And what if it is like a reincarnation thing where you have bits and pieces of maybe other people's souls or spirits, and they have experienced something very similar to it, and so you can see that's what the shorter deja vus are. Maybe not necessarily the ones where you can kind of see what's going on, what is going to happen, what kind of decisions that you can make to change your path or whatever, but like the shorter ones, or the ones that maybe you feel as if you've missed, or I don't know, things like that maybe. I don't know. This is all just like things that I'm speculating, what I'm thinking about after Willow had mentioned muscle memory. That's just like where my head went. So
Yeah, I think that's like one of the great things about like deja vu, intuition, dreams, like all that stuff. It's like we don't know, right? And there is no right answer because nobody knows what the answer is. And so yeah, just being able to think through it and be like, wait, like does this make sense? And then basing that, like comparing it to what your own personal beliefs are about like life, death, you know, like what we're doing here and all that. I think that plays a really big part in what you're going to believe deja vu is and how it plays into your life.
So what about, kind of on the same path about deja vu, is like the dream deja vu, right? So the reason I bring this up is because as a child, I had a reoccurring dream of a bridge, and the bridge was broken for whatever reason. It was being fixed, it was being built, it was whatever the reason was. And we'd be driving along. Sometimes I was the driver, sometimes I was the passenger. And we would come like we'd be driving on this bridge, and then we'd fall off the bridge, and I'd wake up before hitting the water. Growing up as a child, there was really no bridges around me. There was like bridges over streams, bridges over rivers, small rivers, nothing ever very, very big. Then when I moved as a teen, there's a lot more bridges. And now I live in an area of the bridge from my dreams that I die on. Like, and this bridge dream was so real. The first time I went on that, got onto the bridge, like exit, the trees were the same, the signs were the same, the road was the same. So all of it was the same. And there's no way that I would have been able to come across this as a child. So I guess, like, I don't know what my question is, but like, is that like a sort of deja vu, or is that like a flash to a previous life, or is it something, is that how I'm going to die? I don't know, like, but it is kind of creepy to think like as a child, I dreamt of this bridge that I had no way of knowing about this bridge, and then come to move to this place as a teen that has the bridge for my dreams.
So just real quick, I am just gonna let everyone know that Levi had to jump off and go, so she unfortunately will not be joining us for the rest of this episode. But just to, so Will, you bring up an interesting point. I mean, like my belief is that it's possible that it is, I guess, a type of deja vu, like in the sense that I think deja vu is just a memory, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that dream is a memory of something that happened in a past life. And it could very well be you remembering when you died in a past life. But it may not necessarily mean that you are going to die in that same way in this life. Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah. And it's kind of crazy to think about. And that bridge gives me ridiculous anxiety. And other bridges are fine. And some bridges are not okay. It's a spectrum on the bridges.
I feel like that's such a heavy story, and I do appreciate you sharing it with us. But I also think that's more along the lines of premonition. I don't know so much about.
I mean, it could be. It could also be that, like, it could be that's how I die in the future. That could be, like, if past lives are real, it could be how I died in the past.
And it might not even be you. You might be seeing through somebody else's eyes.
Yeah, it could. I mean, it was me. I was present. I don't like me as like who I am now.
Did you see yourself in a mirror and see you physically, or did you feel very present within your own body? Because if you're looking through somebody else's eyes, I would imagine, I haven't experienced it myself, but I would imagine you would feel very present within your own body.
I mean, I guess that goes to the question, like, who is me?
Right.
Like, right? Like that. I feel like that's a bigger question.
Now we're getting really deep.
Yeah, because is me the body you encompass? Is me the soul that is inside? Like, who is me? And so when you ask that question, I don't have the answer. But it was like but it was me in like driving, and it was me in the passenger seat. Like depending on the dream, it would like switch. And I did go back through to see all of the deaths of that bridge and see how people died. And I didn't find anything, but
that you know.
So
no, all of the bridge deaths since it was built
that have been reported.
I feel like the way that that person died would have been reported. Like the bridge is broken. The bridge isn't finished. Like there's a gap in the bridge, and then they fought like they drive off the bridge. Like I feel like that it's not like they jumped off a bridge. It's a car fell off that bridge. I feel like that would be reported. That's not something that would be like, oh, we accidentally didn't report this.
That's fair. I meant more cover up, but yeah, that's fair.
So a couple of things to Gabby's point in regards to the birds. For me, that feels more like nurture versus nature in that situation, where it's yes, but it's a learned pattern where the like older ones are still going to avoid that and they pass it on to their kids, which is like learned things that you have through families, like how I put lemon juice on empanadas. Apparently that's not something that's regularly done, but it's the way that I personally like it. It's something that's learned through my family, that's a way that you eat empanadas.
It's because you need acid in the food. Makes logical sense to me.
I'm not saying that doesn't make logical sense, but it could be one of those things where you specifically do a specific action because it's learned through your elders. So it doesn't necessarily have to make sense because it's just learned. Whether or not, like, because you have like generations and generations of those birds.
Yes, but with the mountain no longer there, they need to get from point A to point B. It's not like they were migrating very far. They could see where it is, and instead of going just straight across, they decided to take extra day. It's not even like, no, it was days around. Like they know you have to go in a certain direction. Birds are built in with a kind of radar in which they know which way is north, south, east, and west. It was proven through tracking and displacing certain birds at certain ages and bringing them back in and having them migrate on their own. These birds that were displaced as eggs, and they flew in the same pattern around what is now not the mountain. Like that's how they proved it. They had taken birds from eggs and raised them on their own, and then they released them. Kiki, please. And then they released them, and the birds, when it was time to migrate, they swooped them out. They went along the path that the other birds had gone around this not mountain anymore.
At a different time than the other birds?
I wasn't there, but it's not like these birds are attached to these other birds. These birds are outside of the flock, and so it's not like they're going to follow a flock that's not theirs.
I mean, I feel like it is a pretty easy science experiment to complete with like your control versus like your variables. It would be interesting to read the white paper on it, on that study, and what they did.
Um, and I've been quiet for a while, so I have thoughts on a bunch of different things. In regards to the prophetic dreams, or what I view as prophetic dreams.
Are you saying my bridge dream is a prophetic dream, Anne?
Potentially.
Great.
But I also
Great. Thank you.
Now Willow's not going to sleep for a few years.
at the same time though, I have experienced what Gabby was describing, where I have a dream where I am a different person in that dream. Like I consider it other Anne in those dreams, because it's super weird. It's like Anne made different decisions and she's following a different timeline. I interact with the same people in my life, but they look differently. And when I am other Anne, I actually make decisions for her. And it's almost like I take over her body. And she gets really upset with me sometimes because I make decisions that she wouldn't make.
Sorry, is this in a dream or like while you're awake?
In a dream.
Okay.
So, like, for example, it could be one of those things where I am, not that this situation has happened, but let's say, for example, Elfie, I'm with you and I recognize Milsom, but Milsom looks differently. But I can recognize that Milsom is Milsom. And for whatever reason, let's say that you two aren't together, then I would actually go up and I would talk to Milsom. And other Anne would get really upset because she's like, oh, we don't like them for whatever reason, blah, 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 blah. You shouldn't be talking to them. And I'm like, no, I know them. I want to do whatever I want. Or like I make decisions not to go to work or not to go to school, or I make decisions on how to write a specific paper that they're working on, because it's literally life. It's not like it's.
So you have life dreams.
I have life dreams.
My dreams are different than that.
Yeah, so are mine. I don't have life dreams. Like I have dreams where like I do like mundane life things, but it's not like there's always like a goal and I'm not competing with myself, which actually it's interesting that your dream self argues with your
Conscious self?
consciousness, I guess. I was like, I don't know how to put this. And I'm interested what like a therapist would say about that. Like, would they do you have like a lot of internal turmoil against yourself? Like, do you fight with yourself a lot when you're awake?
I mean, what I think is like the normal amount, where you would like think about different decisions and things along those lines. But like when I'm talking about other Anne, like certain people who have passed away have not passed away. Certain things that have happened in my life didn't happen. And so I obviously make decisions in that timeline based off of things that I know. And I can hear other Anne, and she gets upset with me because I make decisions that she wouldn't necessarily make. So I don't know if that's inner turmoil or whatever, but
That's like when you're awake.
asleep. Other Anne only happens in my dreams, and only
Right.
occasionally.
But what I'm saying is when you're awake, do you argue with yourself a lot? Do you have a lot of inner turmoil?
I wouldn't say inner turmoil. I feel like I examine all possibilities and entertain all possibilities whenever I'm making a decision. And I will sometimes argue with different facets of my personality, because there's certain parts of me where I'm just like, I really do not want to do this. And then there's the like more responsible part of me that's like, you have to do this. Or there's like the emotional part of me that's very like volatile, which just like, screw everything, I'm not doing it. And so I feel like there's different facets of myself that would not always make the same decision, if that makes sense.
That's interesting that you see it as different facets of yourself, like arguing with yourself, because I don't see myself like that. Like, it all feels like myself. And it's not really that I'm arguing with myself, being like, no, like, I don't want to do that. And then my responsible side is like, but you must. No, it's like, it's all in my head where I'm like, I don't want to do that. Okay, why don't I want to do that? Oh, well, I don't want to do that because it makes me uncomfortable. I'm like, okay, if it makes me uncomfortable, then that probably means I should be doing that thing that's making me uncomfortable. Unless it's an uncomfortable where it's like, yeah, I feel like this is a really bad decision because I'm about to get raped, right? Like, that's a different kind of uncomfortable. But if it's like, oh, I don't want to speak in front of a group of people because that makes me uncomfortable, then I'm like, okay, that to me is a sign like, this is like a growth opportunity and I should be taking it. But I don't feel like it's different facets of myself. I feel like it's all the same self, if that makes sense. It's just interesting. Like, you see it differently than I do. It's not right or wrong or whatever. It's just different.
No, I definitely for sure see it differently. Because I definitely categorize it as different parts of myself. Mostly because I think we can all agree I was very emotionally volatile when I was younger. So for me to be able to not be that emotionally volatile, because those urges to be that like emotionally volatile are still there, I have to categorize it as a specific facet of myself, where I kind of set that aside and have to like view myself in a different way to be able to not indulge in that.
Do you think these dreams could possibly be a manifestation of your lack of control over certain situations and certain things that have happened to you, along with regret over certain decisions that you have had to make, that you feel like the circumstances were also outside of your control, so you were kind of forced to make certain decisions?
Potentially, but I mean, I've had these dreams since I can remember. It's not like suddenly I've had these new types of dreams since I was like in my 20s, or I suddenly have these new types of dreams ever since I was like in my teens. Like, I've literally had these dreams with other Anne since I was child, very, very young.
But as a child, you don't have a lot of control over the things that you do, the people that you hang out with, the activities that you're allowed to do, places to go, where you live, who comes in and out of your life, these kinds of things. So as a child, I think that there's a lot of lack of control, and so I think there's a possibility that maybe these dreams are a manifestation of you not having enough control over your life, even when you were mentally mature enough to be able to make these decisions, possibly.
It's a possibility. I definitely have a lot of issues with control. It's definitely one of my hot buttons. So I'm not denying the possibility that it is a reason.
That's interesting. I feel like for me, I'm a mix of both of you.
What do you mean?
So, of like Elfie and Anne in terms of my personality. Because there's definitely like a more responsible side of me. I mean, it's all me, but I don't feel like it's a different entity. But I will like talk to myself and argue with myself, right? Like,
I'm going to there's some drama going on with my dog, so I'm going to have to excuse myself to deal with this. It was really nice talking about everything with you guys, and I hope to see you guys in future episodes. So farewell.
Bye, Gabby.
So it's like kind of a mix of both. Like there's like a more responsible side of me, and I don't want to say it's like a temper tantrum, but it's like I don't want to do this, and similar to Elfie, like why don't you want to do it? And it's like a conversation that I have with myself of like I don't want to do this. I don't want to go on stage and give this speech. And like, why don't you want to? Because it scares me. But then that's good for you. It's like, but I don't care if it's good for me. And it's like almost convincing myself, but it is still me talking, but like having that internal dialogue instead of being like, yeah. So I guess it's kind of a mix of both, but I still feel like it's like me, the one thing, like the one entity, but it is like having that just like that discourse back and forth. If that
I
makes
think for
sense.
me, it's just easier to assign those specific feelings to something else to be able to do what I need to do. I definitely think that it just that thought process really solidified itself after going through what I went through with Dad and having to deal with the PTSD. Just because doing what I need to do after that is really difficult.
So our listeners don't know what happened. Are you willing to share what happened?
Just to be super brief about it, driving home and my dad basically collapsed while driving and had to take control of the car and had to call 911, pull him out of the car in traffic and the rain and the dark and do CPR for an extended period of time. And my dad died.
Of a heart attack.
So, sure.
You don't think he died of a heart attack?
To be honest, I don't know what he died of. There was never an autopsy. There was never a coroner that came to examine him. There was never anything along those lines. Like, in reality, you can just speculate.
I think that but it was deemed a heart attack. That's what the official like papers say. He died of a heart attack.
Well, the official papers can say what they want to say, but there was no examination done.
Okay, we're not going to go down this rabbit hole.
I mean, they can have an official whatever, you know what I mean? But for me, I've always just left that blank, personally.
So what do you tell people when they ask you what he died of?
I just say he died.
Interesting.
A lot of times people just really don't ask. I just say he died. So, yeah, there's a lot of PTSD that happened because of that event. So, a lot of times it's a lot easier. Like, if the panic attacks get really bad, or if the PTSD nightmares get really bad, or the flashbacks get really bad, it's a lot easier for me to continue doing what I need to do in my daily life instead of completely breaking down if I just assign that to a different
so you
facet of myself.
compartmentalize.
Yes.
So you've started viewing it like this recently. I had understood that this is how like you'd been dealing with it since you were a kid.
the dreams I've had since I was a kid, but in the way that I view, like, the way that I view the way that I function
Your inner
in terms
self.
of like my inner self. Like, I feel like there was some sense of it always being like competing facets of myself, but it didn't actually like really become like an entity until after that event,
Hmm.
if that makes sense. So, because it would be rationally, because for me, here's the one of my major struggles with PTSD is that I have a very, very rational sense of self that says, look, I did everything that I could possibly done. I did everything right. Like, there was really nothing else that I could have done. Very rational thinking, like, I did everything I could. And then there's the hyper emotional self, which is still extremely upset about everything that happened, which gets the panic attacks. And because in my brain, it doesn't make sense that I would have those feelings because the rational self should win out in that situation, at least in my mind. And so for me, I just feel like there's these very two competing people within myself, whereas the very rational person and the hyper emotional person, and that they compete and sometimes one wins out over the other. So have I discovered other facets of myself? Yes, through that process. And I have assigned them their own sort of entity in my brain just because they react in a very specific way and it's very predictable the way that that facet of myself is going to react. And it's kind of like me letting that facet of myself win out in certain situations, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting that we started with deja vu and then moved into the self.
Yeah. So we're coming up on time here. Any last thoughts on deja vu or anything? I know that Levi likes to end with a happy note because things got kind of dark right there for a second. Like, not in a bad way, it just kind of got very deep and yeah.
Yeah.
Well, on a happier note, I feel like it's number one, made me a better artist just because I can channel certain things and feelings into art, which is something that I haven't been able to do before. And it helped me learn about myself and how to be a better person because I'm able to really compartmentalize and decide to be the better person most of the time.
For me, I don't know, I think deja vu makes life interesting. Right? Like, it is interesting to think about these things that we don't know and don't understand and to like speculate these sort of things. Like, I don't pretend to know like what the reasons are, but it is fun to hear about other people's opinions and like go down those different rabbit holes and like let's explore this, right? Let's see what some of these different theories could hold and could it be like a viable option. I don't know. I don't know, it's kind of fun to think about. So I enjoyed talking about the deja vu a lot.
Me too. I think it's an interesting topic, and I think we could definitely like go on and on about it, especially just given how many like different ways you can look at it, and I'm sure that like we only discussed a very, very small like number of options of ways to view deja vu, and it would be interesting to hear like what other people like outside of this group thinks and you know, how they view deja vu and what they think it is and
Mm-hmm.
how it comes to be. I'm also interested if there's anybody out there that has never experienced deja vu. That would be interesting to know.
That would be interesting.
So, for all of our listeners out there, thank you for joining us. Please leave comments if you guys, you know, like what you think deja vu is. If you've never experienced deja vu, that would be amazing to hear about that. Or any of your thoughts on this episode. So, thank you for joining us on the on episode 2 of the Strange, Dark, and Related podcast. And we will see you next time. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.